Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello and welcome friends. This is the sixth lecture for this course Political Parties and Party System in India, and in this lecture today we are going to discuss the history, ideology, leadership and vision of Indian National Congress. And Indian National Congress, which is also known as Congress Party, has played a very significant role both in pre-independent India as a movement party and also in the post-independent India, where it dominated the national politics both at the center and the state during the first 2 decades after the independence, and this we have discussed in a lecture on party system in India as well. Today we are going to basically focus on the history of this party starting from its formation, and you can also see the process of democratization and politicization of the masses. Their mobilization is also this part of evolution of Congress Party from its inception to its post independent phase, which we can divide into different phases. So, in this lecture today we are going to discuss this history of Indian National Congress. In the second and final part of this lecture, we will be focused on the role of leadership in Congress Party and why it is declining and what is the role of leadership in the decline of Congress Party in contemporary times. And also we will discuss finally the ideology and the vision of Indian National Congress about India, the kind of India they want to build and how that is different from the vision of India as presented by other opposition political parties. So, Indian National Congress, which is popularly known as Congress Party, is one of the oldest party in India, oldest parties in India and also in the world. That is the legacy or inheritance of Congress Party, which makes it a kind of umbrella party, a kind of party with strong or rich heritage or legacy, a party which has immense contribution in democratization of the polity, in winning independence from the British rule, a party which helped in the mobilization of the masses, especially in the rural India, and in that way also in a sense training the people for taking participation in the politics, first during the anti-colonial struggle and also in the post-independent phase. So, Congress Party in India, and also if you compare it with other parties in the world, remain one of the oldest parties, which is founded in 1885, which was founded in 1885. It had played a critical role during the national movement, and the characteristic of the national movement, broadly speaking, was shaped by the policies and programs of the Indian National Congress, especially after Gandhi took the leadership of Indian National Congress. The non-violent method of struggle for independence was something that is credited to the Congress Party under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi. And after the political independence in 1947, it played a dominating role in Indian politics, so much so that as we have discussed in a lecture on party system, the first 2 decades it formed government both at the center and the state, and therefore many scholars categorize this period of party system in India as the Congress system, because it was the overwhelmingly dominating umbrella party where there was different kinds of opinions which ranges from the left to the right, which Congress party represented. So, it has rich contribution in both pre and post independent Indian politics, and first few decades after independence was dominated by the Congress party. Even after that, Congress party continued to dominate the national politics, but gradually we see the rise of regional party, and since 90s again the rise of BJP as the alternative to Congress at the national politics. So, it has played an important role in building modern India into a secular, socialist and democratic republic. Given the majority that Congress party enjoyed after the independence, it is to its credit that it laid the foundation for a modern, secular, socialist, democratic republic in India. It is also called centrist party in Indian politics, as it avoids the ideological extremes of both left and right. So, within the party there were factions who did represent the opinions or voices from the left and right, but overall policies and programs of the Congress party avoided the ideological extremes of both left and right. And unlike many other social cleavages party, and social cleavages I mean the complexities that exist in any society, be it on the basis of class or caste, religion and language, and those social cleavages led to the formation of different kind of political parties that represent the particular social cleavages, whether it is caste or religion or class and so on. So, unlike those parties which represent the social cleavages, Congress party do not have any particular or a specific support base. So, it always sought to represent the interests of all Indians, including those who were excluded, weaker and from the marginal sections of the Indian society. And this legacy of Congress is from the pre-independent times as well. So, where you find many groups like Hindu Mahasabha or Muslim League claiming to represent the interest of particular community, Congress party continuously assert that it represent all Indians across the class, language, religion, caste and ethnicity and so on. So, this legacy Congress party continue to express even in the post independent India, and therefore, in the within the Congress party you have communities from different socio-economic backgrounds, and also its policies reflect these broad divergence that Congress party had within itself. So, it represented the ideological spectrum from left to right, and also different segments of Indian society, and that was the plural, rich or conciliatory approach within the Congress party, unlike any social cleavages parties which represented the interest of a particular community or a particular caste. In terms of economic policy, we find Congress party has now supported a new liberal economic reforms, but it also claims to represent the concerns and interest of the common man. So, Congress party for a very long time argued about import substitution growth. That means, we should develop economy or produce things which we will consume and will rely less and less on import. And it has certain protection or certain prohibition in terms of exports or imports of goods for a very long time. That kind of economic policy is a change where the Congress party has initiated the new liberal reforms, and that new liberal reforms is for the rapid economic growth and development. However, Congress party tries to balance this rapid growth and development with a human face by protecting the interest of the common man, at least so it claims. So, in ideological terms, except its economic policy, you see hardly any radical change in terms of its socio-political outlook and programs. Congress party has experienced many splits and merger, and despite its former dominant position, it is on continued interest and the opinions of different sections of the society, not necessarily always in agreement to each other. So, the interest groups or the communities whose interests were contradictory, for instance the landlords or the peasants, Congress party managed to reconcile the competing or different interests and represent the interest of all the segments and the sections of the society. Party developed its characteristic continuous decline. So, since 1967 we see the weakening or decline of Congress party and its domination, and it has reached now to such an stage where in 2014 and 2019 it has won only 44 and 52 seats in the Lok Sabha respectively. So, this clearly shows how Congress party has over a period of time declined from its position of dominance to a stage where it has about 50 member of parliaments in the lower house of the Indian parliament. Now, if you look at its history in details, in pre-independent India, formation and growth of Congress party can be traced back to the national struggle for India or freedom movement. On 28 December 1885, some social reformers, lawyers and journalists attended the first session of the Indian National Union in Bombay, and the conference was later renamed as Indian National Congress. So, that is the beginning of the Congress party, and in the succeeding session party criticized the government policy. Government here is the British government in India, and acts like the Indian Council Act of 1892, as according to party these acts do not give Indians right to elect their own representatives. So, since then in every following session the number of delegates and members joining the party has increased substantially, and that reflected the diversity and pluralism that exist within the party. So, from its inception and subsequent sessions of the Congress party, there has been substantial growth in terms of number of delegates and members joining the party, and party did represent the interest and the opinions of different sections of the society, not necessarily always in agreement to each other. So, the interest groups or the communities whose interests were contradictory, for instance the landlords or the peasants, Congress party managed to reconcile the competing or different interests and represent the interest of all the segments and the sections of the society. Party developed its characteristic from a moderate to an extremist party, and under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi it truly acquired the status of a mass party. So, that was the phase during 1920s when Gandhi under Gandhi leadership Congress really expanded beyond its middle class base of moderate and extremist phase to include the peasants, the women, students and so on, and gradually it became a mass movement or a party which mobilized the large number of masses across the length and breadth of the country. The party was successful in uniting people coming from different backgrounds such as caste, class, religion, language and ethnicity to fight against the British. So, Congress party in a sense provided a platform for different social groups or communities coming from different backgrounds, a platform to express their views or opinions, and that lead to a kind of common opposition to British rule. So, from the very beginning there is a kind of expression of different opinions, different voices from the platform of the Congress party, and that lead to some kind of split or also opposition or the approach in the Congress party to reconcile between or among the competing voices or interest groups. A decade after its formation, there emerged two factions, extremists and the moderates within the Congress party. The moderates led by Gopal Krishna Gokhale were inspired by constitutional methods of bringing about reforms and greater representation for Indians. So, the moderates were constantly fighting for political reforms, more representation of Indians through constitutional means by signing petition, submitting memorandums and so on, whereas the extremists led by Bal Gangadhar Tilak and others were inspired by the method of boycott, protest and direct action, and that lead to a strong factionalism within the Congress. It was split also because of their different approach or method to politics. The party strongly opposed the British policy of separate Hindu-Muslim electorates and worked towards achieving Hindu-Muslim unity, and that remains one of the sole objective of Congress party during the national movement. Besides fighting the British, it also strived towards forming Hindu-Muslim unity. The Congress under the leadership of Dadabhai Naoroji for the first time raised the issue of Swaraj or self-government in India, and since then there have been different debates, different approaches whether we should fight for dominion status or for complete Swaraj and so on. However, it was first expressed in Congress platform by Dadabhai Naoroji, and in Bombay session in 1915 the party allowed delegates from the extremists who parted their ways from the moderate dominant Congress party to take direct action, to launch boycott and protest against the British and the policies of the British government. In Bombay session in 1915 they were allowed to rejoin Congress, and in 1916 in Lucknow session extremists returned to the Congress fold, and also there was some kind of mutual understanding or cooperation developed between Congress and Muslim League to launch a united struggle for independence against the British. Congress party launched many struggles during the independence and has organized organizational presence throughout the length and breadth of the country. So, Congress party was the first party which had its provincial committees and also district level committees, and it covered length and breadth of India, and that penetration to hinterland or deep into the Indian society was the greatest advantage for Congress in mobilizing the masses for the movement against the British during the pre-independent India, and also in the post-independent India to communicating its policies and programs to the masses, and also influencing them to vote for their candidates. Congress party had that organizational presence across the length and breadth of the country. Its notable movements during the independent India was non-cooperation movement along with Khilafat movement in 1920s, civil disobedience movement in 1930s, Quit India movement in 1942. So, these movements helped in mobilization of India's rural masses and also paved the way for independence in 1947. Congress, along with fighting for political struggle, also launched many social, cultural reforms movement, also movement in transforming education or nationalizing education and so on. So, it formed Seva Dal, protested against the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, opposed Rowlatt Act and communal violence, and it also began to take participation in local municipal bodies election, and in 1937 election was held for the provincial legislatures. Congress won an absolute majority in 5 out of the 11 provinces, and it formed governments in 7 provinces. So, Congress party had established its political superiority over other parties like Muslim League and Hindu Mahasabha, even during the pre-independent times. Party was vehemently opposed to two-nation theory and communalism. Hence, even in the polarized atmosphere on the eve of partition that came along with India's independence, Congress party played a critical role in providing India with a liberal democratic constitution, and this framing of liberal democratic constitution has played a very significant role in ensuring the survival of democracy in India, and also a guide for governance or good governance in the country. Now, if you look at the journey of Indian National Congress in post-independent India, which we have briefly discussed when we discussed the evolution of party system, the first phase of Congress in post-independent period began with the prime ministership of Jawaharlal Nehru, which marked the one party dominance. There were many groups working within the party, such as the leftist and the rightist faction, and this phase of party experienced intra-party mobilization, conflicts and rivalries, and towering figure of Nehru provided some kind of cohesiveness, both in terms of ideology and also in terms of organization, to ensure that Congress remain in a dominant position both at the center and also in various states. So, there were Praja Socialist Party and Communist Party which emerged as the strong as opposition parties. However, they could not work as a strong opposition to the Congress because of frequent splits and fragmentation within this party. If we compare communist parties and the socialist party, which were in a very strong position during 1950s, if we compare particularly of Communist Party of today, they had a stronger position in 1950s and 60s. However, because of this split or fragmentation in these party, they could not provide an alternative or present themselves as the strong opposition to the Congress. So, Communist Party, for instance, gained foothold in West Bengal, Kerala, Tripura and parts of Andhra Pradesh. However, it was no challenge to Congress dominance in the national politics. 1967 election ended the political supremacy or the one party dominance of the Congress party, although Congress remained a dominant player at the center till 1989. Except for a brief period in 1977 and 80s, when Janata Party formed government at the center. So, at the national level, Congress Party did maintain its dominant status. However, in different states there was the emergence of state parties and strong regional parties. There were many factions, opportunists and lobbyists within and outside the party, which became more explicit after the election of 1967, and certainly after the split in 1969 and personalization and centralization of power by Indira Gandhi, which leads to high command culture in politics, the organizational strength of the party has been on continuous decline. So, since then, since the split of the Congress with personalization and centralization of power and weakening of organizational strength, there has been continuous decline of the Congress Party from the position of dominance to a position where it is having around 50 MPs in the parliament. And this trend of continuous decline, even when it is acknowledged by its leadership. So, Rajiv Gandhi or even Rahul Gandhi and many other leaders in the Congress acknowledge this decline or the organizational weakening of the Congress. There has been very little effort or attempt to reverse this trend. So, although Congress continued to form government at the center in 1980s and again in 1984, it lost in 1989 and a coalition of National Front government composed of Janata Dal, BJP and left parties was formed at the center. However, this alliance of National Front government did not survive for long because of BJP's involvement in Ram Janmabhoomi movement, and assassination of Rajiv Gandhi was a severe blow to the Congress Party. The succeeding general election of 1991 saw the prevalence of a hung parliament, and Congress I, however, managed to form a minority government under the prime ministership of P.V. Narasimha Rao. Again there was a series of hung parliament after the general elections in 1996, 1998 and 1999, which ushered a new era pre and post alliance politics in India, and both BJP and Congress began to form a new alliance or forge new alliance in different states. This period also coincide with BJP emerging as the single largest party in the parliament, and since then there has been a steady rise of BJP in Indian politics, where now after about 25 years it has achieved a majority on its own. The Congress led UPA, United Progressive Alliance, won absolute majority and formed the government in 2004 and again in 2009. However, in 2014 and 2019, BJP led NDA, National Democratic Alliance, has swept the poll. An even more striking feature of this victory is the fact that BJP obtained majority on its own. The number of Congress Party MPs in the lower house or the Lok Sabha, lower house of the parliament or Lok Sabha is reduced to 44 and 52 in 2014 and 2019 election respectively. So, this shows the stage of where Congress Party has reached from its position of dominance. The Congress Party today lacked an effective organization and support system and largely rely on the charismatic personality of its leader to deliver electoral victories, which is increasingly becoming few and far between. So, for a very long time it relied on Indira Gandhi and then on Rajiv Gandhi to deliver electoral victories, but now because of the weak organizational structure and also lack of charismatic personality, its electoral victories are becoming increasingly few and far between. If you look at the leadership and the role of leadership in Congress party, we find Congress party had a galaxy of leaders since its inception days. So, if you recall pre-independent India, there was the galaxy of leadership that Congress party produced, precisely because it was the dominant party or main party fighting the British, but there were other groups also like Hindu Mahasabha or Muslim League and many other parties, also the Communist Party. However, the Congress party had a galaxy of leaders since its inception days, and even in the post independent India, despite Nehru's towering personality, there are many stalwarts of the Congress both at the national level as well as in the various states. So, the dominant position of the Congress party was also because of a galaxy of leadership that Congress party had, and it produced and it allowed them to express their views, which was not necessarily always in accordance with the high command, which was the later development in Congress party under the leadership of Indira Gandhi. Nehru provided both ideological and organizational cohesiveness to Congress party. However, after his death, there was explicit factionalism, rivalries and ideological differences emerging within the party, and those factionalism, rivalries and ideological differences become more explicit after the death of Congress, which gradually lead to its split in 1969. In Indian politics, role of a charismatic leader in attracting the attention of voters across religion, caste and class barriers towards the policies and programs of her parties has always been immense. So, in Indian politics, the role of leader in mobilizing the masses or attracting the attention of the masses towards the policies and programs of his or her own party has always been immense. So, if you recall the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi or Nehru or Indira Gandhi, or even in the contemporary phase Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So, they all have played a very decisive role in attracting the attention of voters towards the policies and programs of their parties. In Congress, Nehru, Indira Gandhi and to some extent Rajiv Gandhi had that charisma. However, the decline of Congress party in recent decades is the result of the lack of charismatic leadership on the one hand and ineffective weak organization on the other hand. So, this combination of lack of charismatic leadership along with weak and ineffective organization leads to a very weak position of Congress party in contemporary politics, where once it has the ability, it had dominated the politics in India both at the center and the state level in the first few decades after the independence. Now, if you look at its ideology and vision, we find Congress party has always stood for a liberal parliamentary plural democracy and inclusive notion of Indian nationalism. So, the liberal parliamentary plural democracy along with an inclusive notion of Indian nationalism differentiate Congress ideology from other parties, which works on homogenization or singularity. Congress party has always been accommodative, inclusive of new voices, and the voices which are often contradictory and opposite to each other, and constantly tries to reconcile those opposite or different voices. So, Congress party and its ideology stand for a liberal parliamentary plural democracy and inclusive notion of Indian nationalism. It also stands for protecting the ethos and values of constitutional democracy. So, as we have discussed during the evolution of party system in India, Congress party did enjoy absolute dominating position in the first few decades, and yet it adhered to the constitutional parliamentary form of democracy, in contrast to many such parties where they turned into an authoritarian or single party kind of polity. Congress party nurtured or promoted different parties or the growth of different parties without ever trying to suppress them or exclude them or abuse its state power, except for a brief period of emergency. Congress party adhered to this principle of liberal parliamentary constitutional norms and ethos while fighting for power or controlling the state. Its ideology is guided by a Nehruvian brand of socialism, secularism and federal democratic structure of governance. It fights for the protection of minority rights and against all form of extremism and communalism. So, in Congress party ideology there is the strong sentiments or understanding about protecting minority rights and fighting against all form of extremism and communalism, and therefore, Congress also represent a kind of centrist party which avoids the extreme of both left and right. Congress party in 1980s and 90 gradually moved away from the economic model as promoted by Nehru and later by Indira Gandhi, and has adopted new liberal economic reforms. However, it wishes to combine the economic development and growth with addressing the concerns of common men and claims to protect their interests. If we study the electoral or election manifestos or electoral promises of the Congress party, which often reflect these trends, where on the one hand it is for economic progress or development, on the other hand it want to balance the economic growth and development by protecting the interest or concern of the common man. So, its election manifesto reflect these trends in the ideology of Congress party. It remains devoted to the Gandhian philosophy of truth and non-violence in politics, where it shun violence of all forms in terms of conducting its polity or fighting for the power. It is committed to protecting the rights and freedoms of the individuals and communities and enhance unity among various groups and communities, abolishing poverty and emancipating the weaker section of society in order to sustain a democratic, inclusive and resurgent India. So, the approach and ideology of Congress party is to constantly strive for economic progress and development on the other hand, and expanding these growth and development to include more and more people out of poverty or emancipating the weaker section, protecting the rights of the minorities or the individuals, and that has been the guiding ideological position of the Congress party in Indian polity. It has a vision of bringing economic development by generating more development of employment opportunities for the youth, social reforms, advance in science and technology to make India a progressive nation. So, in contrast to other parties, in Congress you have a kind of realistic or pragmatic approach to politics, where they wish to achieve economic progress or economic development along with a human face of such development or growth, where they want growth, but growth with employment, or social reforms, or advance in science and technology to make India a more industrially developed nation. Its ideological vision is to fight communal and divisive forces that destroy the fabric of India's plural democracy. And Congress party has formulated many legislation to emancipate communities out of poverty. For example, National Food Security Act in 2013, or programs like Narega or Manarega. Its acts like Right to Information Act, or path breaking legislation in terms of ensuring transparency in governance and empowering the people or the citizen of India, and enabling them to participate in governing process, and also hold the executive or the government accountable to what it does or it does not do. So, there are many acts like Nirbhaya Act 2013 and Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplaces Act 2013 showed Congress commitment for women's safety against sex crimes and harassment against women. Similarly, Land Acquisition Act 2013, Micro and Small Enterprises Order 2012, Street Vendors Act 2014 showed the party's inclusive attitude towards the poor, weaker and middle class people for the socio-economic development. So, to conclude this lecture on the history of Indian National Congress, both in pre-independence and post-independent India, and also its ideology, one can summarize it by focusing on their approach towards the parliamentary or the constitutional form of democracy on the one hand, empowering the masses on the other, by its ability or approach towards Gandhian philosophy of non-violence and truth, or reconciliation without using violence, to achieve political freedom, and also ensuring the representation of those who are excluded and the marginalized, has been some of the greatest contribution Congress party has made to Indian politics and Indian democracy. And even when it has a very dominant position, it adhered to the principle of democracy or ethos of constitution to promote a vibrant multi-party democracy that we have experienced. However, there has been a gradual decline of Congress party. We will discuss the reason of such decline and also its contribution in Indian politics in the next lecture. The issue that we have covered in this lecture, for that you can refer to some of these texts like Joya Hassan, Parties and Party Politics in India. You can also refer to Adnan Farooqi and E. Sridharan, Can Umbrella Parties Survive? The Decline of Indian National Congress. Again, Praveen Rai and Sanjay Kumar, The Decline of Congress Party in Indian Politics, will give you some understanding about the gradual decline of the Congress party. MP Singh, The Dilemma of the New Indian Party System, To Govern or Not to Govern. Pratap Chandra Swain, dynamics of Indian party system, the emergence of competitive multi-party coalition, Sudha Pai, regional parties and emerging patterns of politics in India are also some of the good articles and text on the nature, the ideology, vision and decline of Congress party in India. You should also refer to the website to understand more about the history, ideology, leadership and contribution of the Congress party. So, that is all in today's lecture. I hope you have learned about Indian National Congress, its formation and its contribution in both pre and post independent India, its ideology and key principle or approach to the politics, and how it declined, what are its major contribution, we are going to discuss in the next lecture. So, we have seen in this lecture how Congress party has played a very critical role in Indian politics, both in pre-independent India and also in the post-independent India. Congress party was also one of the oldest party and first truly mass party in India, when in 1920s, as we have discussed under leadership of Mahatma Gandhi, it made politics a domain where those who were excluded from the politics or those who were at the margin of Indian society, they also began to participate in the politics. And that is perhaps one of the very significant contribution that Congress party has made to Indian politics, that it has given the marginal or the excluded section the courage or the strength to participate in Indian politics, and it continues to nurture that participation even when it had the dominant position in the post independent phase. So, as we have discussed that it had a very dominating position, but it did not try to control or suppress the voices of the opposition. So, in terms of political participation and mobilization of the masses, particularly those who were excluded or at the margin of Indian society, has been the greatest contribution perhaps of Congress party to Indian politics. Its other contribution is a kind of non-violent approach to politics, which it cultivated from pre-independence time, particularly under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi. Even in post-independent phase, the democracy in India has survived, and we have attained the kind of development we have seen without relying to suppression or excessive use of violence. Congress party to a great extent has played a role in this non-violent, by and large non-violent nature of polity and democracy in India. So, there has been excesses, for instance, in during the time of emergency, but the path of democracy remains a inspiring or successful journey, precisely because of the method or the approaches to politics which Congress party has adopted. The philosophy of Congress party that is secularism, that talks about protection of minority rights, that talks about avoiding the role of religion in political matters or respecting all religion equally. So, this secular politics of Congress party has also played a role in avoiding the divisive or the communal forces and their growth in the country. However, there are valid criticism of such approach by many parties, particularly the BJP, when they argue that in its approach to secularism, it is used as an appeasement or minority appeasement by the Congress party, where true secularism means what is correct, what is rightful for most of the communities without making any difference between majority or the minority community. So, there has been a critique to the secularism as particularly developed in 1980s or 70s, but the secular ethos, if you understand this polarized context in the time of independence, where there was partition of India on the basis of religion largely, or two nation theory, Congress party provided a kind of democratic secular foundation, and the Constitution of India, the text which has guided the government of different parties both at the center and also at the state, which has united India or ensured the unity and integrity of the nation, and also it has ensured the survival of democracy or vibrant democracy of India despite of its excesses or obvious weaknesses. Democracy in India has survived because the text that Congress party, even when it has absolute majority in the Constituent Assembly, took decision through consensus by including those who were opposite to its policies and philosophy on board while making the constitution. So, for instance, during the time of constitution making, it has followed an approach where it permitted the voices of opposition to be freely expressed and ideas freely exchanged and discussed, and they framed the constitution through consensus rather than imposing the ideas of few people or its own party. And this parliamentary democratic or plural approach has enabled India to reconcile different forces or different kind of interest groups and the communities, and provided them a space to assert their demands, to fight for their demands, and particularly the phase of 1980s and 90s, when we see mobilization around the issue of Mandal among the intermediary caste, or the rise of BSP or the Dalit politics, the rise of BJP in terms of Mandir or Ram Janmabhoomi controversy, and also the reforms or debates around economic reforms. Congress party had a crucial role to play in terms of allowing those voices to emerge, consolidate, and also participate in terms of policy making by forming the government at the state and also at the national level. So, Congress party in that sense has many contribution to Indian politics. Of course, over a period of time it has declined, and that decline has been obvious from its position of dominance to now in a position where it struggle for having in a strong opposition status even in the parliament, because the number of MPs has been reduced to 44 and 52 in 2014 and 2019 election. However, one should not understand by this performance of Congress party as their inability to revive. So, there is a need, or the national politics in last 30 years by and large alternates between NDA and the UPA led by Congress and the BJP. Even in the recent elections in some of the assemblies like Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, and also for a very brief time in Karnataka, Congress party won election. So, there is the scope of revival in the Congress. There is the ideology or the programs that this party follows, which is which has a scope in national politics today. Its organizational strength needs to be strengthened, and that is absolutely necessary for it to communicate its policies, programs and ideology effectively to the electorates. So, the vision and ideology of Congress party remain very relevant for India to survive as a plural democracy or a constitutional democracy. However, to do so it requires a very strong effective organization, and in its contemporary phase the combination of weak or ineffective organization on the one hand and the lack of leadership on the other hand is something which leads to the status where Congress party has reached today. Now, with Sonia Gandhi and under the leadership of Sonia Gandhi, there has been attempt to revive the leadership at the provincial level. So, in many states like Digvijay Singh in Madhya Pradesh, Ashok Gehlot in Uttar Pradesh, Ashok Gehlot in Rajasthan and Sheila Dikshit in Delhi, they have been given enough autonomy, or Captain Amarinder Singh in Punjab. However, Congress needs to nurture and give autonomy to its young leadership in different states to make its organization strong and effective, and thereby communicating its ideology and vision, which remains very significant and relevant even today for Indian politics. So, to do that it needs to revive its organization, it need to revive its strong base, and that is all in today's lecture on the history of Congress party in both pre and post independent India, and also its ideology and vision, and how their ideology and vision differ from other parties and remain relevant in Indian politics today. Thank you.